The distress beacon cut through empty space like a knife. On the observation deck of Monitoring Station 47, Talvin watched the red warning lights flash across her display screens. Her feathers ruffled with anxiety as she read the message again. Durrali's 7 mining colony, 40,000 civilians, under attack by the Ravager horde. She turned to her companion, Commander Grix, whose 4 arms were already moving across multiple control panels. His insect-like eyes reflected the harsh light of the emergency displays. "How long until our nearest fleet arrives?" Talvin asked, though she already knew the answer would not be good. 6 days minimum, Grix replied, his mandibles clicking together in frustration. "The Ravagers will overrun the colony in hours, maybe less." Talvin felt her heart sink. The Ravager horde never left survivors. They stripped planets of resources and eliminated anyone who witnessed their crimes. 40,000 innocent beings would die, and the Galactic Council could do nothing but watch. "We must try something," she said quietly. Grix turned all 4 of his eyes toward her. "What would you suggest? We have no ships in range, no allies close enough to help. The colonists are already evacuating to underground shelters, but those will only buy them a few more hours." Talvin stared at the distress signal on her screen. Her wing fingers trembled as she made a decision that might end her career. She reached for the emergency broadcast controls. "What are you doing?" Grix asked. "Broadcasting on all frequencies," Talvin said, "including the restricted channels." Grix's antennae stood straight up in alarm. "The quarantine zones. Are you insane? Those regions were sealed off for good reason." "Good beings are about to die," Talvin said firmly. "I will not let protocol stand in the way of trying to save them." She pressed the button. The distress signal went out across the galaxy, piercing through every communication channel including those marked forbidden. The message was simple. People needed help. People were dying. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then a response came through on a frequency that had been silent for 200 years. "Signal received. Help is coming." The voice was strange. Not musical like her own species, not buzzing like Grix's people. It sounded flat, efficient, almost mechanical in its calmness. Grix scrambled to trace the signal source. His claws clicked rapidly on the keyboard as data flooded his screens. When he found the origin point, he went completely still. "That came from Sector 93, he whispered. Talvin felt her blood run cold. The human quarantine zone. "This cannot be happening," Grix said, pulling up ancient files that had not been accessed in decades. "The humans were sealed away after the Harvest Wars. The Council voted unanimously. They were too dangerous." Talvin had heard stories about the Harvest Wars, though she had been young when they occurred. An aggressive empire called the Harvesters had invaded human space, seeking to strip their worlds of resources. The humans had fought back. What made the Council nervous was not that humans had won. It was how they had won. The Harvesters had been utterly defeated, their entire fleet disabled and captured. Yet when Council investigators arrived, they found something disturbing. Not a single Harvester civilian center had been touched. Not one city destroyed. Not one population bombed. The humans had surgically dismantled a military threat without harming innocents. The Council had been terrified. A species that could show such restraint while demonstrating such overwhelming force was unpredictable, dangerous. So they had quarantined human space, forbidding contact for 200 years. "Should we cancel the distress signal?" Talvin asked. Before Grix could answer, their sensors detected something. A ship was emerging from hyperspace near Durrali's 7. Just one ship, small by military standards, battered and worn from what looked like decades of use. "That is their response," Grix said, his voice mixing confusion with relief. "One old ship." The vessel broadcast a message on all frequencies. "This is Rescue Vessel Homebound. We are here to help." On Durrali's 7, The Ravager fleet was already in orbit. 40 warships surrounded the planet like hungry predators. Their commander, a brutal pirate named Skrull, watched the human ship approach on his viewing screen. He laughed, a harsh sound that made his crew flinch. One ship. The galaxy sent one tiny ship to save them. His weapons officer, a scarred veteran of countless raids, leaned forward. "Sir, our records show no data on this vessel type. Unknown configuration." "I do not care if it is made of pure energy," Skrull growled. "It dies like everything else, but first let us have some fun." He opened a communication channel to the human ship. "Attention, unknown vessel. You are interfering with Ravager business. Surrender your ship and we will kill you quickly. Resist, and we will make you watch as we destroy the colony first." There was a pause, then a female voice responded, calm and measured. "This is Captain Rita Hayes of the Homebound. We ask that you leave this system peacefully. These people have done nothing to harm you." Skrull howled with laughter. "You ask us to leave? You and what army human?" "Just us," Rita said. "But it will be enough. Please choose peace." "I choose blood," Skrull said. "Begin bombardment of the colony. Let this fool watch." The Ravager ships powered their weapons. On Dorali 7, colony leader Bren rushed his people into the deepest shelters, knowing it would not be enough. He was an amphibious being, his skin already pale with fear as he sealed the heavy doors. Then a new voice came over the colony's emergency system. It was the human captain. "Stay in your shelters," Rita Hayes said, her voice somehow reassuring despite the terror of the moment. "This will be over soon. I promise you help has arrived." Bren wanted to believe her, but as he looked at the sensor readings showing 40 Ravager warships preparing to fire, he could not imagine how one small vessel could possibly save them. Above the planet, Rita Hayes stood in the center of her ship's command deck, surrounded by her crew. They worked quietly, no panic, no fear, just focused determination. "Send the signal," she said softly. Her communications officer nodded and pressed a sequence of buttons. A pulse of energy erupted from the Homebound, a beacon that reached out into the darkness of space. Skrull saw the energy pulse and laughed again. "What is that supposed to do? Call for help. There is no one close enough to save you." But then space began to shimmer around Dorali 7. Reality itself seemed to ripple and fold. Skrull's laughter died in his throat as 12 more human ships materialized from hyperspace, dropping into perfect formation around the Homebound. 13 ships total now, still outnumbered, 40 to 13. Rita's voice came across all frequencies again, and this time there was something different in her tone. Not anger, not aggression, just infinite patience mixed with absolute certainty. "Last warning," she said. "Leave now or face the consequences. We really do not want to hurt you, but we will stop you." Skrull stared at the 13 human ships on his display screen. Even outnumbered 3 to 1, something about their formation made him uneasy. They hung in space like they owned it, not moving aggressively but radiating quiet confidence. His weapons officer spoke up. "Sir, those ships are not raising shields. They are not powering weapons." "They know they cannot win," Skrull said, trying to convince himself. "They are bluffing. Fire on the lead vessel. Show them what happens when you challenge the Ravager horde." 10 of his warships opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams and plasma bolts streaked through space toward the Homebound. Skrull leaned forward, eager to see the human ship explode. The weapons struck the Homebound dead center. The ship rocked slightly from the impact but did not break apart, did not catch fire. The hull absorbed the damage like it was nothing more than a light rain. "What kind of armor is that?" Skrull's tactical officer whispered. Rita's voice came through again, still calm. "We warned you. Now you have made your choice." The 13 human ships did not fire back. Instead, their cargo bays opened, and thousands of small objects began pouring out into space. Each one was no bigger than a storage crate, dark and rectangular, moving with purpose. "What are those?" Skrull demanded. "Unknown, sir. Scanning now. They appear to be some kind of drone or automated device." Skrull watched as the swarm of objects spread out, moving in patterns that reminded him of birds flocking. His fleet fired on them, but the drones were too small, too fast, too numerous. Weapons that could destroy battleships passed harmlessly through the spaces between individual drones. "They are heading for our ships," his weapons officer reported, voice rising with panic. The first drones reached the nearest Ravager vessel. Instead of exploding on impact, they attached themselves to the hull with small magnetic clamps. More followed, covering the ship's surface like insects on rotting fruit. "Shake them off," Skrull ordered. "Emergency maneuvers." The Ravager captain executed a spinning roll, trying to throw off the drones through centrifugal force. It did not work. The drones clung tight, and now Skrull could see what they were doing through his long-range cameras. They were cutting, precise surgical cuts into key systems, engine ports, weapon emplacements, communication arrays. The drones worked with impossible coordination like they shared one mind. Within minutes, the first Ravager ship went dark, engines dead, weapons offline, life support still functioning but nothing else. "They are disabling us," Skrull said, unable to believe what he was seeing. "Not destroying, disabling." Across his fleet, the same thing happened to ship after ship. The drones swarmed each vessel in turn, cutting away their ability to fight while carefully avoiding anything that would harm the crews inside. One of his captains, a hothead named Vril, screamed over the communications, "I will not be taken prisoner. Self-destruct sequence initiated." "Vril, no," Skrull shouted, but it was too late. The drones on Vril's ship suddenly changed behavior. They stopped cutting and began pulling away, moving faster than before. Within 8 seconds, every single drone had evacuated the vessel. 2 seconds after that, Vril's ship exploded in a brilliant flash. The debris cloud expanded, and Skrull waited for it to damage nearby vessels. But the human drones had positioned themselves in a sphere around the explosion, absorbing and deflecting the debris away from other ships. They had predicted the self-destruct. They had known it was coming before Vril himself had decided to do it. Rita's voice cut through the stunned silence. "We are removing your weapons, engines, and communications. You will not be harmed if you do not resist. Medical teams will board your vessels shortly to ensure your wounded receive treatment." "Wounded?" Skrull muttered. His sensors showed that despite the massive battle, his fleet had suffered only 17 casualties total, all from Vril's self-destruct. None from the human attacks. They were not trying to kill anyone. On the homebound's bridge, Rita watched her screens carefully. Her second-in-command, David Park, worked at his station with efficient calm. "All 40 Ravager vessels disabled, Captain," he reported. 0 human casualties, 17 enemy casualties, all from the self-destruct. Tractor beams ready to move their ships away from the planet. "Good work, everyone," Rita said to her crew. "Begin recovery operations. Make sure those pirate crews have food and water. Some of them might be scared." Down on Durrani 7, Bren huddled in the shelter with his fellow colonists. The walls had shaken when the battle began, but then everything had gone quiet. Too quiet. "Are we dead?" someone asked in the darkness. "I do not think so," Bren said. "Dead people do not wonder if they are dead." He made a decision and opened the shelter door. The sunlight blinded him at first. When his eyes adjusted, he expected to see ruins, burning buildings, craters from orbital bombardment. Instead, he saw humans. Dozens of them, wearing simple work clothes, already repairing the damage the Ravagers had caused in their initial attack. They worked quickly, efficiently, with strange tools that seemed to fix things faster than should be possible. A human female noticed Bren emerging from the shelter. She walked over with a smile on her face. Her name tag read Amy Foster. "Are you the colony leader?" Amy asked in passable galactic standard. "Yes," Bren said, his voice shaking. "What happened? The battle?" "It is over," Amy said. "The pirates have been disabled and will be turned over to the Galactic Council for justice. You are safe now." "But how? There were 40 ships." Amy shrugged. "We are pretty good at stopping people who want to hurt others. Do not worry about that now. Are any of your people injured? We brought medical supplies." Bren looked around at his colony. Buildings were being repaired. Food supplies were being distributed by human workers. Children who had been crying were now laughing as a human medic showed them a magic trick with a light pen. "Why?" Bren asked. "Why did you come? Why did you help us?" Amy looked confused by the question, as if the answer was obvious. "Because you needed help. Is there supposed to be another reason?" She handed him a container of food and a medical scanner. "Make sure everyone gets checked out. We will be here for a few days to help rebuild. If you need anything, just ask." As Amy walked away to continue her work, Bren stood in the sunlight, holding supplies from beings he had been taught to fear. The humans moved through his colony like they belonged there, helping without being asked, fixing things without demanding payment. High above, the Ravager fleet floated in space, completely neutralized. Not destroyed, not killed, just stopped. Skrull sat in his darkened command chair, staring at the screen showing Rita's face. She looked at him with something that might have been pity. "You will be transferred to council custody within 3 days," she said. "Your crew will be treated well until then. I am sorry it had to be this way." Skrull found his voice. "What are you?" Rita smiled sadly. "We are just people who heard someone crying for help, that is all." 3 days passed like a dream for the colonists of Durali's 7. Bren walked through his settlement, barely recognizing it. Buildings that had taken his people months to construct were now repaired and improved. The humans had not just fixed the damage, they had made things better. A communications hub that used to fail during storms now had backup systems. A water purification plant that barely kept up with demand now processed twice as much. Medical facilities had equipment the colony could never afford. "We cannot pay for any of this," Bren told Amy as she finished installing a new power distribution node. Amy wiped sweat from her forehead and grinned. "Did we ask for payment?" "No, but surely you expect something in return." "We expect you to use these things to make life better for your people," Amy said. "That is enough. Oh, and maybe if you see someone else in trouble someday, you help them too. Pay it forward, as we say." Before Bren could respond, alarms chimed across the colony. Not emergency alarms, arrival warnings. A massive fleet was dropping out of hyperspace above the planet. The Galactic Council had arrived. Commander Grix stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the view screens in disbelief. He had expected to find a destroyed colony, scattered debris, and maybe some bodies floating in orbit. Instead, he saw a functioning settlement, a captured pirate fleet neatly arranged and tractored in formation, and human ships calmly waiting like they had just finished a routine task. "This is impossible," he said to his tactical officer. Sensors confirm 40 Ravager vessels, all disabled but intact, crews alive and in stasis. 0 civilian casualties on the planet below. The humans have been providing humanitarian aid for 3 days. Grix's mandibles clicked together nervously. The humans had done in hours what would have taken a council fleet weeks, and they had done it without killing anyone. The implications terrified him. "I am going to board their command ship," Grix said. "Prepare my shuttle." Rita met him in the homebound's docking bay personally. She was shorter than Grix expected, and her clothes were plain work uniforms rather than elaborate military dress. She extended her hand in the human greeting gesture. "Commander Grix, welcome aboard. Would you like some tea? We have varieties from several worlds." Grix ignored the offered hand. I need answers. What happened here? We responded to a distress signal, Rita said simply. Would you like to see the detailed mission report? We documented everything. Minutes later, Grix sat in Rita's small office, reading through data files that made his blood run cold. Drone deployment patterns, enemy ship analysis, civilian evacuation coordination. Everything was precise, measured, efficient. You captured 40 warships without destroying a single one, Grix said. You fought an entire pirate fleet without killing anyone except those who killed themselves. 17 casualties from one self-destruct, Rita confirmed, her expression sad. We tried to prevent it, but we were not fast enough. I wish we could have saved them too. Grix stared at her. You wish you could have saved the pirates. They are still people, Rita said quietly. Misguided, criminal, violent people, but still people. They deserve justice, not death. The council legal system will judge them. That is not our job. What is your job then? Rita leaned back in her chair. To stop the fight, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to make sure that when violence comes, we are ready to meet it with the minimum force necessary. Minimum force, Grix's antennae twitched. You deployed thousands of drones. You disabled an entire fleet. Exactly. We disabled them. We did not kill them. Commander, my people learned a long time ago that overwhelming force does not require overwhelming destruction. We can be very, very good at violence when we need to be, so we have to be even better at mercy. Grix was quiet for a long moment. Tell me about the Harvest Wars. Rita's expression grew distant. That was 200 years ago, before my time, but I have studied the history. An empire called the Harvesters invaded our space. They wanted our resources, our worlds. They thought we would be easy prey because we had been focused on our own development, not on building massive fleets. They were wrong. Yes, but probably not in the way you think. We did not crush them with superior technology or bigger guns. We defeated them by being smarter, more adaptable, more willing to do whatever it took to protect our people. Rita pulled up a holographic display showing ancient battle records. Grix watched as human ships, outnumbered and outgunned, dismantled harvester fleets through tactics he had never seen before. Drone swarms, precision strikes, electronic warfare. The humans never met force with force. They met it with intelligence. When it was over, Rita continued, the harvester military was completely defeated, but their civilians were untouched. Not one city burned, not one innocent killed. We could have destroyed them completely. We chose not to. And the Galactic Council quarantined you for it. Rita nodded. They were afraid. They saw a species that could show mercy while demonstrating overwhelming capability. They did not know what to do with us, so they locked us away and hoped we would stay there. But you did not stay. We heard someone crying for help, Rita said, meeting Grix's eyes. What kind of beings would we be if we ignored that? The quarantine was your fear talking. The distress signal was someone's hope screaming. We chose hope. Grix stood up, his 4 arms hanging at his sides. The council will debate what to do about you. Many will want to reinforce the quarantine. Some will call you a threat. Are we a threat, Commander? Grix thought about the repaired colony below, the captured pirates who had been fed and given medical care, the human workers who had shared supplies they did not have to share, the captain who looked sad about enemy casualties. You are the most dangerous beings I have ever encountered, Grix said honestly, because you have all the power in the galaxy but use it for kindness. That terrifies us more than any weapon. Rita smiled sadly. We know, but we hope you will learn that mercy is not weakness. Compassion is not foolishness. Strength without violence is the hardest strength to master, but it is the only strength that builds peace. Grix left the homebound with more questions than answers. His shuttle carried him back to his flagship, but his mind remained on Rita's words. That evening, As his fleet prepared to escort the captured Ravagers back to Council space, he watched the human ships begin their departure. They had come when called. They had saved 40,000 lives. They had treated enemies with dignity, and now they were leaving without asking for anything in return. As the homebound jumped into hyperspace, Grix made a decision. He would tell the Council the truth. Not the truth they wanted to hear, but the truth they needed to hear. The humans were not the monsters of old stories. They were something far more challenging to understand. They were better than the rest of the galaxy had ever tried to be. The emergency session of the Galactic Council began at dawn on the capital world of Centrum Prime. Talvin stood before the assembled representatives of 12 species, her feathers ruffled with nervous energy. She had submitted her report 3 days ago. Now she had to defend it. The chamber was ancient, built when the council was founded 800 years earlier. Tall windows let in golden sunlight that painted the curved walls. Representatives sat in a circular arrangement, no seat higher than another, symbolizing equality among species. But today, equality felt like a distant dream. "You violated the quarantine protocols," said Representative Mersch, a heavy-set creature whose species valued rules above all else. "You broadcast on forbidden frequencies. You invited contact with the humans." "I broadcast a distress signal to anyone who could help," Talvin replied, keeping her voice steady. 40,000 civilians were about to die. Should I have let protocol kill them? "The quarantine exists for good reason," Mersch continued. "The humans are dangerous." "They saved everyone," Talvin said. "Where is the danger in that?" Commander Grix stood up from his seat, his 4 arms spread wide. "If I may address the Council, I witnessed the aftermath firsthand. The humans defeated 40 Ravager vessels without destroying them. They repaired colony infrastructure. They treated captured pirates with medical care. They asked for nothing in return." "Exactly my point," said Representative Dresch, a thin-limbed being whose species had fought the humans during the Harvest Wars. "They are too capable, too efficient. If they can do all this while showing mercy, imagine what they could do if they chose cruelty." "So we should punish them for being kind?" Talvin asked. "We should protect ourselves from the potential of their violence," Dresch replied. "Better to maintain the quarantine forever than risk their power being turned against us." The debate raged for hours. Some species argued for reinforcing the quarantine, building defensive platforms around human space, preparing for eventual war. Others suggested cautious contact, limited trade agreements, careful observation. A few, like Talvin's own people, advocated for welcoming humans into the council as equals. The chamber grew hot as voices rose. Fear battled with hope. Ancient prejudices clashed with new possibilities. Finally, the council speaker called for order. She was an elderly reptilian named Cirth, one of the oldest beings in the galaxy. Her scales had faded to pale gray, and her movements were slow, but her mind remained sharp. "We have debated long enough," Cirth said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Let us hear from the humans themselves. They wait in orbit. Bring them down." Murmurs of surprise rippled through the chamber. Some representatives looked nervous, others angry, but none disagreed with Cirth's authority. Rita walked into the council chamber an hour later, flanked by David Park and Amy Foster. She had changed into a formal uniform, dark blue with simple insignia. No weapons, no guards, just 3 humans entering a room full of beings who feared them. The representatives stared, some with curiosity, some with suspicion, some with barely concealed hostility. Rita stopped in the center of the chamber and bowed respectfully. "Thank you for allowing us to speak." "You violated a 200-year quarantine," Mersch said immediately. "Explain yourself." "We heard a distress call," Rita said simply. "People were dying. We had the capability to help. We chose to act." "You chose to ignore council law." We chose to save lives, Rita said, her voice firm but not angry. If that is a crime, then I plead guilty, but I do not regret it. Dresch leaned forward, his narrow eyes fixed on Rita. Why should we trust you? Your species defeated the harvesters easily. You could conquer us all if you wanted. We could, Rita agreed, and the chamber went silent. But we do not want to. Conquest is expensive. It costs resources, lives, and peace of mind. Every species we conquered would be another species we had to watch, control, suppress. That is not freedom. That is prison. Pretty words, Dresch said, but words are cheap. Then judge us by our actions, Rita said. We have had 200 years in quarantine to build fleets, develop weapons, prepare for invasion. Did we? No. We focused on improving ourselves, our worlds, our society. When we finally left quarantine, it was not to attack anyone. It was to answer a cry for help. Amy stepped forward. I spent 3 days on Durali's 7. I helped repair buildings. I played with children who had been terrified hours before. I taught a farmer how to improve his irrigation system. Those people did not care that I was human. They cared that I was there when they needed someone. David added quietly, we do not want your fear. We do not want your submission. We want to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We want to help build a galaxy where distress signals get answered, where pirates face justice instead of death, where different species work together instead of hiding from each other. Sirth tapped her claw on the armrest of her chair. You speak of working together. What does that look like to you? Rita met the old reptilian's gaze. The Council has military fleets for defense. You have trade networks for prosperity. You have diplomatic corps for negotiation. But you do not have a rapid response force for emergencies, natural disasters, pirate attacks, accidents in deep space. When these things happen, people die while fleets mobilize and politicians debate. And you want to be this response force. We want to help, Rita said. When disaster strikes, send us. When someone needs rescue, call us. We will come. No payment required. No political strings attached. Just help when it is needed most. Why, Mersch asked. What do you gain? Peace, Rita said. Every person we save is someone who does not die hatting us. Every disaster we respond to is a chance to build trust. Every time we choose mercy over violence, we prove that strength does not require cruelty. That is what we gain. A galaxy that sees us as friends, not threats. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives argued with each other, voices rising and falling like waves. Rita stood silent in the center, waiting. Finally, Sirth called for order again. We will vote. Should the human quarantine be lifted? Should they be allowed to join the council as emergency response specialists? The voting took an hour. Each species had to reach internal consensus first. Some debates were fierce. Others were quick. When all votes were counted, Sirth announced the results. By a margin of 7-5, the Council accepts the human proposal. The quarantine is lifted. Humans may establish response stations throughout Council space. However, there are conditions. Rita nodded. We are listening. All human vessels must register with Council traffic control. Response missions must be coordinated with local authorities, and every action you take will be monitored and reviewed. One mistake, one act of aggression, and this agreement ends. We understand, Rita said. We will prove ourselves worthy of your trust. As Rita left the chamber, Talvin caught up with her in the corridor. Thank you for coming. I know it was not easy. Rita smiled. Thank you for sending that distress signal. You risked your career to save people you had never met. That is real courage. Talvin's feathers fluffed with embarrassment. I just did what felt right. Exactly, Rita said. That is all we are trying to do too. 6 months after the Durali's 7 incident, the galaxy looked different. Human response stations orbited key locations throughout Council space, each one staffed with rescue teams, engineers, and peacekeepers. Their white and blue ships became a familiar sight at disaster zones and emergencies. Rita stood in her new office on Centrum Prime, looking out at the city below. The human embassy was small compared to other species buildings, but it served its purpose. She was no longer just a ship captain. She was the official liaison between humanity and the Galactic Council. The responsibility weighed heavily on her shoulders. "You have another meeting in 10 minutes, David said from the doorway. "Representative Dresch wants to discuss the incident at Kelvar Station." Rita sighed. "Of course he does. He has complained about every single mission we have done. He is afraid of us." "I know, but I wish he would at least acknowledge that we are trying to help." The meeting with Dresch went exactly as Rita expected. He sat across from her in the embassy conference room, his narrow face pinched with disapproval. "Your people exceeded their authority at Kelvar Station," Dresch said, sliding a data pad across the table. "The station administrator did not request your assistance. You intervened anyway." Rita looked at the report. Kelvar Station had suffered a reactor malfunction. Radiation was leaking into the residential sections. The station administrator had been trying to evacuate people, but was moving too slowly, worried about protocol and paperwork while his people were being exposed to deadly radiation. A human response team had arrived, assessed the situation, and begun emergency evacuations without waiting for official permission. They had sealed the reactor breach, treated radiation victims, and saved approximately 300 lives. "The administrator was failing," Rita said calmly. "People were dying while he worried about forms. We did what needed to be done." "You overstepped," Dresch insisted. "You cannot just ignore local authority whenever you disagree with them." "We did not ignore him. We tried to coordinate. He kept saying he needed to consult with his supervisors, fill out requisition forms, get approval from 17 different departments. We gave him 30 minutes to act. When he did not, we acted for him." "That is exactly the problem," Dresch said, his voice rising. "You decide what is necessary. You decide when to intervene. You make these choices based on your own judgment. What if you are wrong?" Rita met his gaze steadily. "Then we accept responsibility for our mistakes. Show me one. Show me one time in 6 months where we have made the wrong call. One time where our intervention caused more harm than good." Dresch opened his mouth to respond but said nothing. He could not name a single instance. The humans had been perfect in their execution, and that perfection scared him more than any failure would have. "You are too good at this," he finally said quietly. "That is what terrifies me. You never miss. You never fail. You are efficient and capable and kind, and it feels wrong. Nothing should be that consistently excellent." Rita softened her tone. "We fail all the time, Representative. We just do not fail in ways you see. Every mission, we review what went wrong, what we could have done better. The Kelvar Station administrator, we should have communicated more clearly with him, helped him understand the urgency. We could have saved 30 more minutes if we had been better at diplomacy. You saved 300 people. We could have saved them faster. Every second counts in a crisis. We train constantly, study our mistakes, push ourselves to improve, but we are not perfect. We are just committed." Dresch stood to leave but paused at the door. "Why do you care so much? These are not your people. These are not your worlds. You could go back to your own space and live in peace." "Because someone has to care," Rita said. "Someone has to be willing to run toward danger instead of away from it. We tried isolation. We spent 200 years alone building our own paradise. But paradise gets boring when you know people are suffering beyond your borders, so we chose to care. We chose to help. That is all." After Dresch left, Rita received an emergency call. Her screen lit up with an urgent message from the Outer Rim. A colony ship full of refugees had suffered catastrophic engine failure in deep space. 5,000 beings were stranded with failing life support. Rita activated the response network immediately. The nearest human station was 4 hours away, too long. The refugees had maybe 2 hours of oxygen left. But there was another option. Rita opened a channel to the private human fleet still in their own space. "This is Rita Hayes. I need a volunteer crew for a high-risk rescue. Engines will need to push past safety limits. There is a real chance of ship failure." The response was immediate. 17 ships volunteered within seconds. Rita selected the fastest ship, a rescue cruiser called Swift Hope, and transmitted the coordinates. "You have authority to exceed maximum speed ratings. Get there as fast as you can." The Swift Hope jumped into hyperspace, pushing its engines 40% beyond their design limits. The risk was enormous. At those speeds, any miscalculation could tear the ship apart, but the crew did not hesitate. They arrived at the refugee ship with 12 minutes of oxygen remaining. The Swift Hope's medical bays filled with casualties suffering from oxygen deprivation. Engineers worked frantically to restart the refugee ship's life support while rescue teams evacuated the most vulnerable. When the crisis was over, the Swift Hope's engines were destroyed, burned out from the extreme speeds. The ship had to be towed back to human space for repairs, but all 5,000 refugees were safe. News of the rescue spread across the galaxy. Other species began to understand what Dresch could not accept. The humans were not perfect. They took risks. They made sacrifices. They pushed themselves to the breaking point and sometimes beyond it. But they always came when someone needed help. Rita received a message from the refugee ship's captain, a gentle being named Torvin, whose species had fled their homeworld due to civil war. His words were simple but profound. "You did not know us, you owed us nothing, yet you risked your lives and destroyed your ship to save us. Why?" Rita recorded her response carefully. "Because that is what people do for each other, or at least, that is what people should do for each other. We are trying to build a galaxy where the answer to someone needs help is always 'we are coming,' never 'that is not our problem.' Every rescue, every life saved gets us closer to that galaxy." Torvin's response came an hour later. Just 3 words, but they meant everything. "We will remember." And they did. Within weeks, the refugee community began organizing their own volunteer rescue teams, trained by human instructors. They could not match human technology or response times, but they embraced the philosophy. Help those who need help. Answer the call. Be the ones who come running. The idea spread. Other species started their own response teams. Some were better than others. Some failed at first and had to try again. But the pattern was set. Helping others was no longer seen as weakness or foolishness. It was becoming the standard. Rita watched this transformation from her embassy office and allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. And humans had helped start that change not through force or threats, but through simple, consistent kindness in the face of crisis. Dresch would never fully trust them. Some species would always be suspicious. But more and more beings were learning that the scariest thing about humans was not their power. It was their refusal to use that power for anything except helping others. 1 year after Durali 7, Rita received an invitation she had not expected. The Galactic Council wanted to hold a formal ceremony recognizing human contributions to galactic safety. She almost declined. Ceremonies and medals were not why humans did this work, but David convinced her that symbolism mattered. "People need to see that helping others gets recognized," he said. "It encourages more people to help." So Rita found herself standing in the same council chamber where she had once defended humanity's right to respond to emergencies. This time, the atmosphere was different. No suspicion, no fear, just curiosity and, from some species, genuine warmth. Cirth, the ancient reptilian council speaker, stood before the assembly. Her scales had faded even more, and she moved slowly, but her voice remained strong. 1 year ago, we debated whether to accept humans into our community. Many feared their power. Some saw them as threats. Today, we honor what they have become to us: partners, protectors, friends. Rita felt uncomfortable with the praise. Behind her, David and Amy stood with other human responders who had been invited. Each one looked equally embarrassed by the attention. Sirth continued. In 12 months, human response teams have answered 417 emergency calls. They have saved over 2 million lives. They have asked for nothing in return. They have proven that strength and mercy can exist together. The ceremony proceeded with various representatives sharing stories. Talvin spoke about how human teams had helped her own homeworld during a hurricane that devastated coastal regions. Grix, who had once been suspicious of humans, described how human engineers had designed better safety protocols for Council military vessels, reducing training accidents by 60%. Even Dresch spoke, though his words came slowly, reluctantly. I have opposed human involvement from the beginning. I have questioned their motives. I have looked for evidence of hidden agendas or secret plans. I have found none. In that absence of evidence, I must acknowledge truth. They are what they claim to be, helpers who ask for nothing except the chance to help again. When Rita was called forward to receive the formal recognition, she hesitated. This felt wrong somehow. They had not done this work for awards. But then she saw something that changed her mind. In the observation gallery above the council floor, hundreds of beings watched. Refugees whose ships had been saved, colonists whose settlements had been rebuilt, station workers whose lives had been rescued during industrial accidents, children who had been pulled from burning buildings, parents who had been reunited with lost family members. They were all watching her, all of them alive because someone had answered their distress call. Rita accepted the recognition, a crystal sculpture representing human council cooperation. She held it carefully, feeling its weight. Thank you for this honor, she said to the assembly. But I want to be clear about something. We did not do this alone. Every rescue involved coordination with local authorities. Every mission succeeded because different species worked together. The real achievement is not that humans responded to emergencies. It is that the galaxy learned to let us help. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. A year ago, many of you were afraid of us. Some still are. That fear is not unreasonable. We are capable of terrible violence when necessary. But capability is not destiny. We choose every day to be helpers instead of conquerors. We hope that, eventually, our actions will speak louder than your fears. Rita set the crystal sculpture on the podium. This belongs in a public place where everyone can see it, not as a reminder of human excellence, but as a reminder that any species can choose compassion over cruelty. Any being can decide to help instead of harm. That is the real message we want to share. The ceremony ended with a reception where representatives from different species mixed and talked. Rita found herself cornered by Torvin, the refugee captain whose ship had been saved by the Swift Hope. I wanted to tell you something, Torvin said, his gentle voice barely audible over the crowd noise. My people have established a rescue training program on our new colony. We call it the Swift Hope Initiative. We are teaching our children that helping others is the highest calling. Rita felt tears prick her eyes. That is wonderful. We learned it from you, Torvin said. Not just the tactics or technology, the philosophy. My daughter asked me yesterday why humans risk their lives for strangers. I told her what you told me, because that is what people should do for each other. As the reception continued, Rita slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. David found her there, watching the sun set over Centrum Prime. You okay? He asked. Just thinking, Rita said. A year ago we were the scary unknown. Now we are part of the community. It happened so fast. We worked hard for it. I know, but I worry about what happens when we fail, because eventually we will. We will respond to an emergency and not save everyone. We will make a wrong choice. We will let someone down. David was quiet for a moment. When that happens, we will take responsibility. We will learn from it. We will do better next time. That is all anyone can do. Rita nodded. She knew he was right. Perfection was impossible. What mattered was the commitment to keep trying. Her communicator chirped. A distress signal from the far edge of Council space. A mining accident on an asteroid colony. 200 workers trapped underground. Local rescue teams were overwhelmed. Rita looked at David. He smiled and pulled out his own communicator, already contacting the nearest response station. "You know what to do," he said. Rita activated her channel. "This is Rita Hayes. We have a situation on asteroid Gamma 7. Mining accident, 200 workers trapped. Who can respond?" 3 human ships volunteered immediately. The nearest was 2 hours away. Rita gave them authorization and coordinates. As she worked, she felt the weight lift from her shoulders. This was what mattered, not ceremonies or recognition, just the simple act of helping when help was needed. Down in the council chamber, the reception continued, but Rita and David had work to do. They coordinated with local authorities, arranged medical support, prepared evacuation protocols. The same tasks they had done hundreds of times before. The same tasks they would do hundreds of times again. 2 hours later, the response team reported success. All 200 miners rescued. Minor injuries only. Another emergency resolved. Another distress call answered. Rita made a note in her log, a habit she had maintained since the first day. Each entry was simple: date, location, situation, outcome. She wrote the final line that she wrote after every mission. Help was needed, help was given. This is who we are. In the observation gallery above the empty council chamber, one being remained. Old Sirth sat alone, watching Rita and David work through the glass. She had seen many species rise and fall in her long lifetime. She had witnessed wars and peace, tragedy and triumph. But she had never seen a species quite like humans. They had the power to dominate but chose to serve. They had the capability for destruction but practiced preservation. They had every reason to be arrogant but remained humble. Sirth hoped they would remain this way. The galaxy needed beings who ran toward danger instead of away from it, who answered distress calls without calculating costs, who chose to help not because it was easy or profitable, but because it was right. As she left the chamber, Sirth sent a message to the Council's historical archive. In it, she wrote about this first year of human involvement in galactic affairs. Her final line echoed Rita's philosophy. A distress signal was sent. What arrived terrified the galaxy, but what stayed gave the galaxy hope.